to our spring break camp-in. As we talked about in our other video where we set up camp, we are going to be doing this whole week. We're going to be working with the library system to talk to you about kind of camp life, various aspects of camp life with the soldiers of the Civil War, and the librarians are going to do some really cool videos to complement these. So I am sitting back here with my pal Ranger James. We are in what the park calls our 50-acre field, one of my favorite locations. It is a big, beautiful, sweeping field. Give you an idea of how big it is, 50 acres. Give you a few guesses, might not need more than one. And we are sitting down, we are still in Union garb. We are in Union clothes, Union soldier clothes. We wanted to kind of keep that theme going, and each time you're gonna see us back at camp, we'll add a little bit more. So we stripped down a little bit more. So we're still wearing our sky blue trousers and our undershirts. I've got my light green and white and orange undershirt here. Ranger James is wearing a really cool brown and black undershirt. But you notice we're not wearing those thick blue coats. We were thinking, number one, it's getting kind of hot. And when the soldiers were at camp and relaxing, they might not be wearing those heavy wool, dark blue coats. So I've got my wool vest on here with the brass buttons and my hat to keep the sun out of my eyes. But other than that, we've got our sleeves rolled up. We're at camp. And we're talking about something we're going to be using our hands for today, and that is food. So if you guys go on your own camp excursions and go camping out there with your friends or family, then you know food is a big deal. You've got to plan for it ahead of time, and you can't take your favorite microwavable stuff. You can't go to McDonald's while you're out in the woods. So the soldiers, they had an added level. So today we have all sorts of really good options for camp food. The soldiers did not have that many good options, and one of the main reasons was because no refrigeration. Okay, they didn't have a lot of ways to keep things from going bad in the backcountry or on the campaign trail. Okay, and they didn't have some of the sophisticated ways of drying things out and some of the other methods that they use for all types of food technology for camping. So we're going to go through, Ranger James and I are going to go through some of the food that the soldiers would have had. So number one, we have to have our lunch bag or lunch sack, which is what they would have called a haversack. So a haversack for a Union soldier is just kind of like a satchel. It is a dark black bag, okay, with a strap on it and a leather strap to keep it closed. And it's kind of this shiny painted stuff. So this was a canvas sack that's been painted with this material to keep it from, just to make it a little more weatherproof. Hanging on front of that is very important for a soldier to have, and that is the coffee cup. You've got kind of a copper coffee cup here, nice metal, and I would have used this for everything from shaving, drinking hot beverage in the morning, to drinking a cool beverage or something like that in the evening, or even eating some rice or something out of if I didn't have a bowl. So I've got my coffee cup here. And many of the Union soldiers, so the Union soldiers were issued food in the form of rations. And rations were measured portions of food. You have a lot of soldiers' mouths to feed, and you only have a limited amount of food, so everybody only got a super measured amount, and that was called a ration. So one of the parts of the ration, daily ration for a Union soldier, or a couple of daily rations, was coffee. So we have our coffee beans here. This is just a little white bag with some coffee beans. Could have ground those up or even soaked those in boiling water and had a nice cup of coffee with some of my meals. Okay, we also have to have a plate or a bowl. Now this was kind of interesting. This was not an issued plate. It looks like that. It's just a metal kind of concave looking almost half bowl. This is actually a canteen side. So you see I'm sitting in front of it, got our canteens hanging up here. Okay, Ranger James will take that off there and kind of highlight it to the camera. And what this is what they would do if they didn't have a plate, was they would take an extra canteen, they would stick it in the fire, and you can see how it lines up just like that. They'd stick it in the fire, melt the stuff that holds the two sides together, and now they have two plates. So I've got my metal plate here, comes off of that canteen. Next, let's get into the yum-yums, all right? So we're going to pretend we have a fire here. We didn't need to have a fire for this demonstration. But the basic soldier's food would come, you get a meat and a vegetable. Well, I'm sorry, a meat and a bread, and sometimes vegetables if they were in season and able to be dried and put on the menu. So for our bread, part of the ration, the Union soldiers would have something delicious called hardtack. Okay, so what hardtack is is another word for hardtack was army cracker. These were mass produced. These are just basically like a hard, stale graham cracker that was on your parents' dashboard for 8 years or something. Very gross. And Ranger James already knows where I'm going with this. The reason these guys called it hardtack is because, see, hard as a rock. So hard, in fact, that many of the men would have to soak this stuff in water or coffee before it could be soft enough to eat. All right? So I've got my bread here. Now for the meat. Again, no refrigeration, and their beef jerky and things like that did exist back then, but that jerking, drying process took a long time. These guys, these armies needed ways to get a lot of food into the battlefield and into the camps quickly and at large portions. So they didn't have time to dry it out and stuff like that. So what they would end up doing, I'm pulling this out of my haversack here in kind of this greasy looking cloth sack, they would salt their food, heavily salted. So what I've got in my hand right here is roughly a quarter of a pound or a fourth of a pound of chunk of pork. This is salted pork, very fatty, okay, heavily, kind of gross looking. It's this orangey kind of color here, really nasty. I believe this piece of pork was probably 5 years old when I got here 5 years ago. So if you do the math, it's kind of gross. I wouldn't eat this if you paid me. But the salted pork, they had to salt it really heavily in order to keep it from going bad as long as possible. And then the only real way they could have to cook it was to fry it. So maybe they would take their metal plate, put it in the fire to get it nice and hot, and fry this up just like bacon. But we know bacon's delicious, but it's also not very healthy, okay? Especially not when it's so heavily salted as this. So we've got our bread, got our meat, and on the rare occasion, in some cases, the soldiers would have some sort of vegetable. And what I have here in this little white cloth sack is a couple of dried beans, okay? So the beans were a welcome difference, you know. You can see here, they're just white navy beans there. Not a lot of, nothing special to them. And they could put these in a pot of boiling water and kind of give their meal a little bit extra, okay? Now, we'll go ahead and put this next to our other stuff so you can see our rations lined out. We've got our coffee cup there. Maybe we can make ourselves, so while I'm doing this, Ranger James might, you want to make yourself a plate of rations there? He'll get himself a dinner plate there. Now, that kind of sums up what the kind of the soldiers' food and kind of that camp food. As you can see, nothing very healthy, not a lot of options when it comes to this stuff. But it was what they had, and that's what they had to eat. And that's one of the reasons the soldiers didn't feel too well a lot of the time. So when the librarians, when you see their video, it's going to be really cool. They're going to make something 1,000,000 times tastier than this, and I don't want to ruin the surprise, but it starts with S and ends with s'mores. So yes, they may teach you how to make s'mores, which are a lot more delicious than anything the soldiers would have had here. So with that being said, Ranger James and I are going to sign off. Thank you, sir, and we will see you next time for Soldier Camp Life.